sending his last letter to Timothy, wanting to see him before a pending execution. There's no guarantee that Timothy will be able to travel in time before Paul's execution. And our hearts are drawn a lot to his words in chapter 4 that he fought the fight, that he finished the course, that he kept the faith. Yet if you look at the rest of the book, it focuses on helping Timothy becoming a greater follower of Christ. In his last letter to his servant, to his student, Paul spent much of that letter not talking about himself and his situation, but how was Timothy going to take the mantle that had been entrusted to him and carry it on to others. The same thought is in Hebrews chapter 10, where we are going to be looking at just a few verses, but I want us to get the context of this. So look at chapter 10 in the book of Hebrews, the 19th chapter, because the author is conveying the same heart for the people who were listening to this letter being read in the public assembly of the church. Therefore, brethren, since we have confidence to enter the holy place by the blood of Jesus, by a new and living way which he inaugurated for us through the veil, that is his flesh. And since we have a great priest over the house of God, let us draw near with a sincere heart and full assurance of faith, having our hearts sprinkled clean from an evil conscience, and our bodies washed with pure water. Let us hold fast the confession of our hope without wavering, for he who promised is faithful. And let us consider how to stimulate one another to love and good deeds, not forsaking our own assembling together, as is a habit of some, but encouraging one another, and all the more as you see the day drawing near. And since he saw the day of Christ's return drawing near nearly 2,000 years ago, I think we can say amen that the day is drawing even nearer today. And for that reason, we look at what the author instructed and we take it with a greater urgency. Because the idea that this author had for the congregation is the same heartbeat that Paul had for Timothy, in that he was looking to find a way to stimulate them to love and good deeds. The word stimulate means to help cause someone to do something. You want to stimulate somebody? You ever don't try this at home? I'm going to put a surgeon's warning on everything I say. Don't try this at home. My grandparents raised cattle. They had cattle out of Washington. And Grandma had a little problem because I asked as a little kid, I said, I was 5, 6 years old, and I was watching Grandpa, and Grandma was out there with me, and she said, "What's Grandpa call these cows?" And they're going to listen. And my 6-year-old mind is thinking, how is that big old animal going to listen to that guy? But they did, most of them. Now, there's a few of them that were as stubborn as you can get. And with some of them, Grandpa would take a little plotter and he would just, what? Poke them. He would stimulate them. He would cause them to respond. Now, I'm not advocating you take a plotter. I don't advocate you go poking people. But we are called to help stimulate one another in love and good deeds. Because the focus is not only how do we become better followers of Jesus, but how do we help others to become better followers of Jesus. And one of the things which I hope that we take away from this section of Scripture here this morning is a desire to be a reason why someone pursues the life of Christ. That we can walk out here and seriously consider and to accept and to embrace and to be excited about the fact that we can be used of God in such a way that we are a reason why someone pursues the life of Christ. And that is the beauty of the church. The community of the church. The body of the church. Attached to one another. One of the blessings of the community of followers as a church is it provides reasons for us to serve God. It provides us reasons to glorify God. Whenever you look at Scripture, there is only one institution that God has ordained that will never perish. And that is His church. There is no organization, there is no institution that you can be a part of that is going to be eternal. There's no group you can join other than God's church that is going to be eternal. There's no other organization that Jesus gave promises to than His church. When He talks about the ability to be strong and the ability to even to stand against the evils of this world. There is no other institution that Jesus has promised that they have this authority than the church of God. That is something beautiful. And that's why we ought to want to serve in and through the local church. Because it connects us to something that is eternally secure. That as I invest myself into the work of God, that the things in which I have done for His kingdom will not perish. This week, probably tomorrow, I'm going to have to mow my grass again. I just did that last week. I'm probably going to have to do it next week. Well, we need some rain here. But that's something that needs to be continually maintained. That, to be honest with you, in 100 years, I'm not going to be mowing grass. I can guarantee you that. But the work in which I do for the Lord is something that's not going to perish. It's something that's not going to decay. And so, when we look at this idea of not forsaking the assembling together, that really has nothing to do with just coming to a service that primarily has to do with us participating in the work of God. When I sat under Dr. Adrian Rogers at Bellevue Baptist Church, there were times he would say from the pulpit, and I know he probably got heat over this, but he said it nonetheless. He would look out the congregation and he would say, I know some of you are here for a reason. And that's because that there's a big congregation and you think you can hide here and not serve God. But God knows you. And God knows that that's not biblical. And so if you're here today trying to hide from God, let me tell you, if Jonah can't hide from God, neither can you. And I thought, hello. But so it's not just church attendance that we're looking at. But we're looking at how, when we come together, how is that going to enhance someone pursuing the life of Christ? Because if all we do is to come together just to meet and greet and yet have no biblical mandates that is being implemented through our meetings, then we are handcuffing ourselves in a serious matter. So when we look at the fact that he said not to forsake the assembling of our brethren, it's because if you forsake the assembling of the brethren, how can you be a reason why someone pursues the life of Christ? How can God use you to be a blessing for someone else to pursue Christ? And so we're going to be looking at a couple of different ways that God can use someone to help others pursue the life of Christ. First of all, it's through inspiration. I believe that many believers want to impact the lives of others. I believe that there's many believers who want to leave a biblical legacy from their lives. My dear friend, if the Lord comes back after I die, I want some of the things that he has taught me to go on through somebody else that goes beyond my years. I even want the Word of God that he is doing through me and teaching through me to go beyond where I'm at right now. I want his Word to be implanted in you. And I want his Word to be implanted in the community. I want his Word to go beyond the physical restrictions that this body has. Because I want to see God do something in someone else's life as well. The word consider has two practical ways in which we can inspire people to grow in the faith. First of which, what it means to consider, it means to have a great concern about them. And so we're looking at the spiritual journey. So do we have a great concern about the faith of other people, even if they are unconcerned or unaware of what God can do through them? In other words, when the writer is addressing this congregation, remember, there are people who have already walked away from the faith. And there were people who were considering walking away from the faith. And the writer's intent is focused on this idea. Listen, if you're going to walk away from the faith, look at all the things you will be missing. What do you mean? I'm not going to miss anything if I'm not serving the Lord more than what I am now. Oh, really? Oh, my dear friend, let me tell you something. Serving the Lord is the greatest blessing we can ever have. Serving the Lord is the greatest stability we can ever have. There is nothing that is more precious than to know that the things in which He does through us can be blessed by Him. There is nothing that compares with what He can do through you if we yield ourselves to Him. I look at the gifts and talents of many people, and my heart aches because some of them don't give their gifts to the Lord. I look at the gifts and talents that people have. I look at some of the experiences that they have, and yet they're going to steal that from God as if that's going to protect them. But it doesn't. And that they don't use the opportunity that's set before them to give themselves as an offering unto God. And my heart breaks for them. My heart breaks for them because they're missing out on so much that what God can do. You know, sometimes we can get mad, then we gossip about them, but the reality is we should be heartbroken for them because they're missing a grand opportunity to use this day to bring honor to the Lord Jesus Christ. You may say, well, what difference does that make? Listen, when your life is submitted to Christ, God has a way of working through your life in which you have never seen before. That even the places you go, you can be a witness in Walmart, you can go to Super One, you can go anywhere. And God, when someone is yielding to God, there's no telling what God can do through that person. But so many times we get so sidetracked and so excited that we don't see what God really wants to do through us. And my heart breaks for that person because they're missing out on the grand joy of what God can do through them. And so if we're going to be a reason why people pursue the life of Christ, we first have to be concerned about them. We have to be concerned that which God can do through them is not being done, and that should break our hearts. And we take that concern and we begin looking for ways on how we can enhance them in the faith. This word consider talks about that you sit down and that you think through how, based upon observation, how you can help someone else. We all have time that we spend with people. We spend time with our families. We spend time with our friends. But the question is, do we use that time intentionally? I remember one day a mentor confessed to me that he knew that he had regular meetings with me to kind of help me along in the faith as I was young in the faith. And so he confessed to me years later, because he wanted me to make disciples. He confessed to me that before you came to a meeting, he said, I already had an idea of how the meeting was going to go. He said, because I prayerfully thought through this one question. A young preacher is going to come sit in my office today. And I have this opportunity to instill in him something that God can use that would change this man's life. So by the time King leaves, what do I want to plant in his mind? I mean, because we can sit down and talk to people, and sometimes we can talk for hours about nothing. But what we were to use our conversations with people with an intention that we are thinking through and wanting them to walk closer with God. What if we use our conversations that we had this past 7 days, and instead of, if we just talk to people about things, but what if we use the next 7 days, if the Lord allows us to live that long, what if we use the next 7 days conversations, and each time we talk to someone, we think about, how can I help this person become closer to Jesus? I tell you what will happen. You begin to see how God can use you to bless somebody else. And to be honest with you, your friendship with that person will increase. Because when that guy was mentoring me, I also shared the secret with him. Because I knew that when I went to go see him, I knew that we could just get off on any kind of topic and just go off on things. I said, you know what, King? When you go to him, what nugget do you need today from him that he can help you with to learn how to be more Christ-like? So the reality is that people that you're trying to inspire, you try to think about ways that you can help them to become more Christ-like. And listen, this is awesome, people. This is something we can all do. That we can all say, you know what, I'm going to be spending time with my family on this night. You know what? God, would you show me how I can use that time to maybe drop just something in their lap that can encourage them to walk more faithfully with you? And so when I went to Brother Ray, when I went to mentors, I would have a list ready about things in which I wanted to just learn from him. Because I didn't want to just go sit in his office and just talk to him for an hour or so. I mean, this guy's giving me his time, and I wanted to use that wisely. And you know what happens? When you and I begin to consider how we can encourage one another, how we can stimulate one another to be more faithful to the Word of God. You know, as you begin to inspire people, as you begin to encourage people, as you begin to tell people, listen, I believe God can use you in this way. I believe God can really use you in this ministry. That as you inspire others to be more Christ-like, if they respond and as they mature in their faith, you know what happens? It goes from this. You begin to inspire them, and if they take the bait and they go and pursue God, then what happens is the person that you're trying to inspire in turn inspires you. How do I know that? Because one night I remember me and Brother Ray, we sat down for a couple hours one afternoon, and he gave me a list of homework to do. I mean, my goodness. He loved just I knew when the last 5 minutes of our meeting was there, because he would always give me homework to do. And then I want to quickly leave before he thought more homework for me to do. And so I remember one day he sat down and he said, now, King, when we come back next week, I want you to read through this. I want you to do this. I want you to come back and give me something written I said, like a paper, a book report? He said, yeah. I said, well, I thought, I'm in college. I got enough book reports to do. But I said, okay, I do. I'll write down. And I remember that night, I was at home and I was looking over what he was asking me to do. And I had a question. I could not get this out of my mind. And so for a couple of days, I struggled with what he wanted me to do. So I just broke down and I called him in one day. He wasn't in the office, and so I called him at the house. Well, his wife, Miss Paula, answered. And I said, Miss Paula, I know it's around 7:30 p.m. tonight. I'm so sorry of interrupting your family time, but I just have one question for Brother Ray. And she said, well, Michelle went to go get her dad. He'll be here in just a second. And she said, Kenny, don't apologize for calling. She said, you don't know this yet, but you will one day. He gets more joy out of y'all's meetings than you can ever know. I didn't realize that until years later. And I began to implant my life into someone. I began to understand that when you see someone that you have invested your heart into, and that you see that they are taking the Word of God and they are just growing in their faith, you know what that does to you? It helps stabilize your pursuit of God. How does it help stabilize it? I just said in this regard. I have a 6-year-old, a soon-to-be 4-year-old. I have a 2.5-year-old, and I have a 5-month-old. And I know it's this. The 5-month-old ain't picking up on this yet. He will. Because that joker pays attention to every little nick and name we do. But I do know this. That my 6-year-old, my soon-to-be 4-year-old, and my 2.5-year-old, they repeat things that we say. They do things that we do. And I'm thinking, you know what? It's one thing for me to get in trouble for what I do, but it's another thing to set an example for somebody else to follow my foolishness. And so as I want to be a parent, I want to clean up my life so that my kids will have an example of what to do instead of what not to do. And they got enough of that already, by the way. The same goes that when we're inspiring people to be more godly, that as we know that they are looking to us, it makes us look more unto Him. In fact, what would help a lot of us in our spiritual journey to be more passionate about God is for us to implant what we know today in somebody else. Because what's going to happen is that they possibly going to come back and ask you questions, and you're going to say, well, wait a second. If they're leaning on me to help them to learn about God, then guess what I need to be doing? I need to be learning about God. Because I find it very hard for a student to go beyond the maturity of the teacher. That's just the way it goes. And so, as people that you are aspiring, they become an inspiration to you, because as they are trying to walk with God, they look to you, and that is going to make you stabilize your pursuit of God. It's also going to make you strengthen your passion of God, because you don't want to mislead them. And since you don't want to mislead them, then you want to depend upon Him. And as you depend upon Him, your passion for Him intensifies. And when that happens, then they see a continuation of the journey of faith. in you. You know, a lot of times people don't want to be mentored by someone else because, you know, sometimes it's hard to find somebody who'll be brutally honest with you. And they say, you know what, I don't have everything figured out. One of the things I respected about Ray was this, that there was some question I asked him that he actually had the audacity to look at me and say, I don't know. You're supposed to know everything. You're the one teaching me. No. I appreciate his humility to understand that he struggled in things as well. That he had areas that God was dealing with him about. And you may say, well, that will make them realize that you're not the big king. That's the point. Because it gives them hope that if God is using them in such a way and they still have areas that God is working on them, then there's hope for me. And there's hope for you. And there's hope for all of us. And so it stabilizes our pursuit of God and it strengthens our passion for God. We can only imagine how much Paul meant to Timothy by having such a knowledgeable teacher explain God's ways to him. Yet, it meant so much more to Paul knowing that the insights that he shared with Timothy were going to be passed on to faithful men who can teach others also. But how can we be a reason why someone pursues the life of Christ if they're not being faithful to God right now? Look at what it says in verse 24 and 25 once again. And let us consider how to stimulate one another to love and good deeds. Now that's all good and well if they want to receive the instruction. But what if they don't? Not forsaking our own assembling together, as is a habit of some, but encouraging one another. And all the more as you see the day drawing near. The word encouraging doesn't mean just to it doesn't mean you can't write a note, but it's just not writing a note saying, hey, you have a good voice, or you teach well, or you make a great fill in the blank. The word encouraging is more than just saying words of affirmation, but the word encouraging means to invite someone to join you doing something. The word encouraging means to invite someone to join you in doing something. So when he's telling them to encourage one another, what he is saying is this, that for those who are on the fringes, those who are thinking about walking away from the faith, those who are discouraged, those who feel like there's no reason to follow Christ, that the cost is too high, the cost is too dear, whatever the reason is, he said, go to them and join arms with them and say, come, join me as I serve God. That means so much more. Because, number one, how can you tell someone to serve God if we're not serving God? How can you tell someone to give of their lives if God has so little of our lives? The word encouraging means that you are involved in the work of God, that you are wanting to serve God, that you are serving God, and that you're looking over here. You're trying to inspire people, and sometimes people don't respond. You try to inspire them, and sometimes they don't respond. You try to encourage them, and sometimes they'll look at you like a cat looking at a new gate. And so then you go to them and say, listen, there's something in which I'm doing. I need your help. Would you come help me? Would you come and be a part of this with me? Now, you don't have to get into all the, well, I'm trying to win your heart. No, just get them involved in your life. And as you are intentionally thinking, how can I use these opportunities to make them more like Christ, then the times that you're together, just make it about serving God. Invite them to come and to be a part of what God is doing in your life. And that builds a strong connection between them and you, them and the church, which enhances their spiritual walk with God. Which is the opposite of what some people were doing in the church. John Wesley once said this: there is nothing more unchristian than a solitary Christian. Forsaking the assembling is many times begins with the idea of filling our schedules, finding a reason why God's word needs to be pushed back, why God's work needs to be pushed back. And that reveals a sinking heart. Because in that person, that they're trying to find something that only God can give them. Only God can give you a purpose in life that is everlasting. Only God can give you a joy in life that's everlasting. Only God can give you a peace that's everlasting. Only God can do this. And if we think that only God can supply that, then we need to encourage one another to join in His work. You know, when we think about, and you insert, as an insert in your bulletin, you have a description from your nominating committee about how church members need to be serving in the local church. You know, typically we look at this and say, oh, here we go through nominating stuff again. Here we go. I got to think of a reason to say no. I got to go through all this. You know, just get somebody else. Y'all just make a decision. I'll do it later. The reason why we do things like this, the reason why I believe in having good committees is because it gives people an opportunity to work together in the faith. Well, Brother Ken, I can do it by myself. Let me ask you something. How can you inspire someone by yourself? If you're doing things by yourself, how are you going to bring an inspiration to somebody else? How are you going to invest your heart in someone that you don't spend time with? You can't. You know, a lot of times we can look at committees and we can say, well, just get the job done. And we miss what the job is. The job isn't to make sure that the church is clean, or the job is to make sure that the bills are paid. The job is not to make sure that the grass is mowed or the Sunday school is. Those are just peripheral things. The job is to make us more like Jesus. That's the job. The job is to use each of these committees, each of these ministries, to point us to Christ. That, my friend, is the heart. So when we ask people to come be a part of a committee, we're going to be using those committees to encourage one another to be more like Christ. And as you come together, as you join together, as we work together, what happens? God is glorified. And in His glorification, He does things that only He can do. And that's what the writer of Hebrews was concerned about. The writer of Hebrews was concerned that there were people who were looking at serving God as optional. They were looking at serving God as an obligation. They looked at serving a God as, well, I just don't want to do it. And with them, he told them to encourage one another. All the more as you see the day drawing near. Why is that? Because you take someone who is not concerned about how God is glorified on this earth. You look at someone who has no concern about spiritual things. And there's reason to be concerned about them spiritually. And that's why he said, particularly the ones who are walking away from the faith. He's like, you need to go invite them, go get them, go bring them to yourself as you see the day drawing near. Because we have no idea when that day is going to come. The writer was deeply moved that some people forsook the faith and that others were contemplating whether Christ was worth the cost of persecution. Now, he wasn't concerned that God's plan would just fizzle away. He was concerned that the people that he loved would fizzle away and to foolishly stand against God. That's why our prayer needs to be, Lord, use me in such a way that I become a reason that someone pursues the life of Christ. God can use you to be a reason for someone else to be inspired to follow Christ because time was taken to invest in them. And by inviting them to join you in doing something that we absolutely love doing, and that is serving God. You want to know why I spend so many times with Ray Pebble? We would sometimes spend an hour, 2 hours, 3 hours. Sometimes he'd keep me there 4 hours because he was so excited. It was such a joy. I knew not to ask this question if I only had an hour. By the way, what's God teaching you this week? Boy, if I asked that question, we were there for half a day. Because I could see in this man's eyes a love for God's word. And to be honest with you, I wanted that. I looked in his eyes, and I could tell that man loved God. And I was sick of religion. And I wanted to look at the Bible the way he did. And so, as that is true, and as we invite people to join us, then God can use us to help someone.